I look back at that other Bojack and I think, who is that?
And who was he?
I came from a broken home, and I used to feel like my whole life was an acting job, doing an impression of the people I saw on television, which was just the projection of a bunch of equally screwed up writers and actors. I felt like a Xerox of a person, you know what I mean?
But not anymore?
No. Now, I feel like me.
So here's the thing about life as a performance in Bojack Horseman. Bojack himself makes several comparisons throughout the show of his own life as a sort of television show, a performance, an act, and overall, fictional media and the figures that he saw on television, or who he played on it, were the main driving forces for his own development of morality, his understanding of relationships, and his concept of how to live a life in general. To begin, I believe that Bojack relies so heavily on these portrayals of healthy relationships in fiction, or simply positive relationships, and these amazing, almost larger-than-life celebrities, is due to the lack of guidance he received from his own parents growing up. We've covered extensively on this channel how Bojack was largely neglected and heavily abused as a child. While his father was barely present in the home for his formative years, basically berating him without end whenever they did spend time together, accidentally usually, his mother was a more constantly negative presence in his life, casually shooting down any confidence or happiness that he managed to find. But what neither of these parents managed to do was show him any love or provide any sort of guidance that, of course, every child needs to develop into a mature, emotionally healthy adult. And something that many children who feel this isolated from their own family find respite in is television, as Bojack does. He says himself in Free Churro that everything he ever learned about being good, or even potentially being good, about how to be kind or value others, he learned from television shows. It can be a quick escape from the horrors of an abusive home life, a way to self-soothe among all the chaos that surrounds them, and it makes sense that many children would begin to lose themselves in that much more positive world, identifying with the characters and feeling the need to embody what they stand for, to hopefully carry some of that positivity or peaceful resolution, that triumph that many heroes are able to achieve into their real, rather nightmarish life. Connecting heavily with these stories and these fictional people due to the lack of connection that they have to the world around them, and valuing those connections more than any real relationship that they have. Every human needs these things growing up, and when there's no one else around to provide any of it, we have to search for it in fictional worlds, escaping from the harsh reality of it all, to disassociate from the constant fear and intimidation, the constant assertion that we are meaningless. Unfortunately, though, the messages that these sitcoms or pieces of fictional media present can often be too simple for the rigors of reality, or sometimes even downright problematic. One of the most obvious aspects of this in the show being the concept of the grand gesture and how unrealistic they are with regard to their effect on close personal relationships.
All I know about being good, I learned from TV. And in TV, flawed characters are constantly showing people they care with these surprising grand gestures, and I think that part of me still believes that's what love is. But in real life, the big gesture isn't enough. You need to be consistent. You need to be dependably good.
Many television shows promote problematic heroes who make a myriad of mistakes, but perhaps are able to secure the love or opportunity that they're striving for with some grand gesture just before everything goes horribly wrong for them, showing that they've learned and grown and that they are finished with their development. But this is, of course, not even close to how real life operates, because there's always more afterwards, not just a beautiful, happy resolution. There's always the day after the grand gesture. Bojack for a long time believes that relationships can be kept without any sort of consistency, whether that be with kind gestures, messages of appreciation, or even regular amounts of contact. You know, the basic building blocks of healthy relationships. And we see this through how he treats his closest friends over the years. I would say most notably Todd. Despite how much comfort Todd provides by being around, helping Bojack to escape ultimate loneliness, he receives no appreciation for any of it. In fact, Bojack actually essentially abuses Todd for years on end, calling him worthless, blaming him for messes around the house that Bojack himself caused, and overall shrinking his self-confidence so that he has no desire to venture out on his own, no belief in his own abilities that he can use to find something that he is actually passionate about and wants to strike out on his own with. He doesn't want Todd to feel good about himself for a large part of this series, because he knows that might result in his leaving him, ultimately caring more about his own need for attention rather than Todd's emotional well-being as a friend should. But even through this treatment, all the times he pushes others away because he fears intimacy, he still fears loneliness even more. So when those relationships are on the line because he has ignored them or completely decimated them himself, he goes to extreme lengths to show the person that he still wants them around. Like when he goes to retrieve Todd from his improv cult. It is a wonderful gesture, showing Todd that he does indeed care about him, at least a small bit. But it is ultimately meaningless in the face of everything that occurs afterwards. As in season 3, while Bojack at first makes an attempt to consistently treat Todd with more respect and to recognize what he adds to his own life, he still disregards Todd's feelings time and time again for the sake of a quick pick-me-up, as he does with Emily. Now, I understand that a lot of people try to excuse this as not really any sort of betrayal, as Todd wasn't really dating Emily and never went on to date Emily. But the problem here isn't cheating or betrayal, necessarily. It's that Bojack was aware that Emily meant a lot to Todd, and that he slept with her without care for whether or not it would hurt him. He didn't know why Todd ultimately backed out of an encounter with Emily, but he still knew about his feelings for her, and sleeping with Emily for such a thoughtless, pointless reason crosses a major line in terms of their friendship and the trust that they have tried to build up this entire season. And even though he has built a lot of goodwill with Todd and showed him the year prior how much he cared via the grand gesture, even possibly saving his life pretty much, he did not live up to the standard he set with that gesture in the days to come, leading to the real end of the friendship for a while and a sharp distance placed between the two of them. I think another crucial thing besides just the concept of grand gestures that television did not really prepare Bojack for was how complicated life and relationships can really be, and how nothing is ever really resolved completely as it can be in television. His time on Horsing Around kinda led him to believe that all problems could be solved, everything could be righted in 22 short, hilarious minutes. Or how even after all of the fighting, all of the betrayals, all of the running away, everyone was always there for one another. How no matter what they did, mistakes they made, they remembered the good parts of one another and always chose to stay together. That when there is a resolution, a happy ending, reality remains that way and the conflict never comes up ever again. It's dealt with, it's in the past, and no longer an issue in anyone's eyes. But in real life, as I said, there isn't always that happy ending where everyone gets what they want, everyone forgives one another, and nobody is ever hurt. He loses Hollyhock, one of the most prevalent parts of his recovery, due to his actions from the past coming to light in the present, even though he believed that he had left them completely behind. Because he had done so much work to rehabilitate himself, commit to sober life, he assumed that he had reached that sort of conclusion for himself, that this was the end of his development that he was always searching for, and he could finally live the rest of his life without having to try so hard to be a better person. And therefore, he had earned that conclusion, and there wouldn't be any turmoil, even though there are definite mistakes he has made and people he has hurt that are still feeling the effects of his former presence. We can't pretend that the past hasn't happened, that even though we are far better now, we aren't still responsible for those old errors, and we can't blame those who were hurt for still speaking their mind. But that is often how it works in fiction. When the characters do the hard work, their biggest mistakes become forgivable, even by those who were hurt. And due to their development and their learning from their mistakes, their errors can no longer come back to hurt them, and even the people they hurt the most come to forgive them. And one way they really hammer this whole idea home is that I feel like the finale of this show doesn't even really feel like any sort of a finale. We get every indication that life and their paths forward are really just beginning to come to fruition. We're just not going to get to see it, because Netflix sucks. But it's far more realistic that way, and provides a much more grounded message that I think connects further with the audience. We are never done as people. We can never wake up one day and say, this is the best that I can be, and I shouldn't bother trying to be better, or ever pretend. There is a definite stopping point to our own development. We have to get up every day and try to be better than we were the day before, in however way we can, no matter how small. But something else that stems from his learning how to behave and how he should be acting from all these fictional personas is that he often feels that he isn't really himself or any sort of real person, that he is faking his persona and simply playing the character he thinks other people want to see, that he knows to be sympathetic and that can garner attention and love from those around him time and time again, as he has seen in those TV shows he grew up on. When he watched Secretariat on the screen as a child, he didn't just idolize him, he wanted to be him, as we can see when he attempts to smoke simply because he saw Secretariat doing it once. And I don't know what Bojack's views on Nixon's are in the present, but I'd imagine he still probably considers him to be one groovy dude. And it's not as if this completely stops as he ventures into adulthood, as he, of course, stars as Secretariat in the movie version of his life, and has been trying to get that picture made for actual decades. Honestly, his desperation and insistence on making this film, this project, are very indicative of his wanting to actually become Secretariat, become that man who he saw as the ultimate racer, the person who could always move forward and never look back, even if that's not really who he was. He tries to align himself with this personality, as when he was a child, he viewed Secretariat as the paragon of success, especially for horses like himself, a father figure even, and one that taught him more than his own father ever did, or even tried to. And even though Secretariat was definitely not the man Bojack believed him to be as a child, and he did obviously learn the truth about him because he wanted to make the gritty, real biopic, it didn't change how he felt about him and what he learned from him about how to be. That perception that he got about Secretariat as a child never really went away. This pattern is really evident in Brand New Couch, where Bojack, attempting to change his behavior, puts on a brand new attitude, where he really cosplays as this extremely well-adjusted, optimistic, carefree man, without taking any of the particular steps necessary to actually keep it up, as he still ignores Todd's wishes and throws away his belongings even while stating outwardly that he values him. He's simply parroting what he believes to be the correct, the positive path, without really doing any of the work involved in actualizing it. I mean, I'm not gonna say it was a bad thing, because he was, after all, making an effort to be better and generally being nicer to other people, but all I'm saying is there isn't much of an effort to change what he knows most to be a problem about himself, and it results in him crashing down because he's essentially just slapping a happy face on and hoping that it sinks into his actual emotional state, something that he states he actually does believe works in Underground.
Just pretend you are happy, and eventually you'll forget you're pretending.
It's the same reason he gloms on to Wanda in the very next episode, stating that she makes him want to be a better man, which, by the way, is an incredibly common trope in media, but it doesn't fundamentally change who he is. It doesn't help with his alcoholism, his anxiety, his depression, his self-loathing, because he's not actually admitting those issues and doing the work to correct them, or perhaps get the help to lessen their hold over him. He is just dating someone who sees the world a lot more positively than he does, and hoping that it spreads to him eventually, through osmosis, I guess. And the result of his modeling himself after so many characters or celebrities is this intense uncertainty in who he is. So uncertain, in fact, that whenever he is involved in a major role, the part often bleeds into his personality, especially with Filbert in season 5. Bojack states in the premiere of that season that he doesn't want to be Filbert, that everything Filbert is represents everything about himself he dislikes, but still found himself falling into this role, adopting the character's traits, and blurring the line between reality and fiction so much so that he can't even tell the difference for a period of time. It's this season that we get a sense of how deep this pattern runs within him, and how violently he can throw himself into these roles that he is cast in, even with his own reservations about playing them in the first place. And yes, the drugs he was taking have a lot to do with his delusions about being Filbert, but I think the ease with which he was able to slip in between this role and his other role as Bojack that we're more familiar with speaks to how little he really understands himself. We can really see this pattern start when Bojack is just a teenager, as when he attends that one party and becomes anxious about actually being himself, he lapses into a more generally pleasing persona to the crowd, using alcohol as a sort of confidence booster, and singling out the only possible real relationship he could have formed, Katie from Spanish 1. And even though it earned him lots of praise in the short run, in the long run, he only becomes more lonely. Even after horsing around, a role that had largely no personal connection to him, Bojack struggles to blur the lines between his own life and the one he lived on screen, on camera, often referring to and believing that the child actors he worked with were indeed his family, despite their repeated assertions that they are not. We get a strong sense of how he felt like a father figure, mostly to Sarah Lynn, how he saw this time as his shot at having a family, and how he felt specially bonded to all of them due to that, but they don't really feel the same way. They never got that out of that show as Bojack did because he put much more into that role. There's really an overwhelming amount of evidence throughout the show and many decades of Bojack's life that he struggled to figure out who he really was as a person. It's part of what he describes in Xerox of a Xerox, how he's simply always been mimicking those tragic, deeply flawed, and overall unhealthy characters all these years because he saw them have happy endings. It isn't until his journey through recovery that he really finds out who he is and what he wants out of his life. After really looking inward and at his past and everything he's ever chosen, as well as why he might have chosen it, he has more clarity than before and is able to understand his journey in a way he never could prior to that, allowing him to discover what he actually enjoys: teaching, helping students realize their own potential and harness their skills, or even just helping others to find some joy in the free time as he does in prison. I loved hearing him talk about possibly volunteering because he gets so much gratification out of helping these people turn their lives around and find joy in performing. And that to me speaks to a very real part of his personality that he's never really explored before, or that he never gave himself time to explore. Overall, there's a lot to take away from Bojack's developing his moral compass and general personality from television and popular media, about how much damage it can do to interpersonal relationships, how it can dilute your sense of self, and delay your finding what truly matters to you. This show does a wonderful job depicting both how these issues can come about due to neglectful parenting and also how they can result in the harm of others through that lack of care or outright danger that the person puts them in by modeling their entire self after these characters they saw in these entirely fictionalized pieces of media. But let me know if you agree in the comments below, and as always, if you enjoyed, consider supporting me on Patreon. That's patreon.com/PosiTVty. That's PosiTVty. There you get all these videos before they come out on YouTube. You can choose exactly what you want to see on the channel, and you get the unedited essays, so you get to hear all of my lovely mistakes and things that I don't think I should post on YouTube. But I appreciate the support on YouTube itself a ton. Like, it means a lot that you're even here, and I hope you're having a wonderful week. I hope you continue to have one for as long as possible. But remember, you know, it's not going to stay perfect forever, and just keep your head up because things will turn around.